Hi and welcome to the Book Bar, where everything bookish is on the menu. Today I want to talk to you about my very favorite novels of all time so far. I know you all know how hard it is to choose your favorite books, even in one category, like one genre. And this was nearly impossible for me. But on Goodreads, I do have a category of books that I've marked as my favorites as I've read them. And I've been on Goodreads for, I don't know, over a decade. So I went and scrolled back through my Goodreads account, and I looked at just the books that are not part of a series and that are not nonfiction, and I came up with a list of 6 or 7 books that are my very favorite novels of all time. And then I'll do a video another time about my favorite series. I also have decided that I obviously need to do videos about my favorite children's books, and specifically middle grade and YA and picture books, and it's a lot of videos. So today it's just my very favorite novels of all time. Normally I would make a fancy drink, but it is summer and I really just need to stay hydrated right now. It's been quite warm for Juneau this last little bit. I'm super grateful for it because it's really nice to have a reprieve from the rain whenever it comes. But yeah, I have been feeling it. It is hot. We all got sunburns. You can probably see still. It's been lovely. And I haven't been doing as much reading because of spending time outside. So this is a good time to just dig into book lists and tags and things like that. But I have some good reviews coming up. Okay, so digging into my list of top 7, we'll just go ahead and say top 7. It's a great number. Favorite novels of all time. The first one is actually one that I no longer own, so I'll pop the picture up here on the screen. It is The Snow Child by Aoen Ivy. And this is also the most contemporary of all the books on my list. It's not the one I've read most recently, but it's the only one written anywhere near recently. I made a video about another book by this author this year, and I really did like that one, which was To the Bright Edge of the World. But I still like this one better. The Snow Child is about a couple who comes to Alaska, and the area that they come to is not densely inhabited. They are not native Alaskan. They are coming to Alaska to homestead, and the year is 1920. So this story follows Jack and Mabel, these two main characters, as they do the hard work of trying to not really tame the land, just find a safe place for themselves in this forested area of Alaska that's a lot like where I live, and that's part of the charm. But it takes a magical turn and it becomes kind of a fairy tale retelling when a mysterious thing happens to a cute little snowman, snow child, that they created together. The snow child disappears that they've made with their hands in the snow, but the next morning a mysterious little girl shows up. So it is not as whimsical as that makes it sound, because the main themes in this book, I would say, are grief and depression, and also things like longing and unfulfilled desires. There's a lot of kind of marital communication and miscommunication. It's a very layered book with this magical realism woven in, and it just tore me up. And I loved it so much. She's an excellent author, and I gave that book to my mother, which I don't regret, obviously. I wanted her to read it, but I want a copy because I want to read it again. So that is the first. These are in no particular order. I don't think I could rank them. And my next one is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This was written in 1960, and you've probably all read it by now, but I unfortunately did not read it as early as I should have. My personal story about this book is that it was assigned to me, or I chose it from a list my senior year of high school. And it was a college preparatory school, and my schedule was full like all seniors are, and I was also feeling done with school like most seniors feel. And it was one of the kind of last big assignments. I was supposed to write a paper about To Kill a Mockingbird, and I just remember that whole season feeling so overwhelmed, and I did not read it. So I did not feel this is so funny because the effort which I went through to justify my actions is pretty comical, but I didn't want to read Cliff's Notes or something like an abridged version, or I don't even know if there is an abridged version. It's not a long novel. I just did not have time, and I had to write this paper. It was something like I think it might have been my college English class even, and I needed that college credit. And so I did not read the book, but I flipped through it and I read the like blurb on the back cover, and I just took one little thread of the themes and the plot, and I wrote a paper on it, and I ended up writing my paper about autism. So this is it's not really one of the finer moments of my life. I wrote a fine paper, but it probably wasn't even that great of a paper about autism, and I'll get to why I chose that in a minute. Because I was just so stressed and I just needed to get something down. And I think she may have given me a C. I certainly didn't deserve more than that, but it got me through the class. Anyway, a few years ago, I mean, I've been dealing with this guilt forever, right? And a few years ago, I was like, I really need to read that book. I can't get through my life having said that I read the book when I really haven't read the book, and I need to read the book. So I read the book. What year was it? Looks like I read it in 2016. And I felt so foolish for a number of reasons. It wasn't hard to get through. It's a very compelling book. I got through it very quickly. It, again, just like The Snow Child, broke my heart into pieces. I loved every minute of it. And I thought this would have been so enriching if I had read this at 17 or 18 instead of putting it off until much later. Alas, I've read it now and I adore it. And I have not read the sequel, so I'm not considering this a series. Go Tell a Watchman is the one that she published much later. It's gotten so many mixed reviews that I haven't read it yet, though I own it. I just don't want to ruin this one for myself, so I haven't yet, but I will. So if you're unfamiliar with the story, it is narrated by a young girl named Scout, and her father and some of the neighborhood people, and also a man that her father is defending are the other main characters. Oh, and her family. And there is a black man standing trial for something he did not do. And Scout's father, Atticus, is the lawyer, the white lawyer, assigned to represent this black character, Tom. Harper Lee says that it was written based on observations in her own small town in the South, and just the way she saw people treat each other and relate to each other and think about each other, and it being told through the eyes of this young girl, I think is a wonderful effect. It is really sad how contemporary it feels in many ways, because of issues that are still alive and well, unfortunately, in our country today. But I do see lots and lots of critiques about it's still a book that kind of has a white savior complex, and there's all kinds of really interesting things that you can think through and work through internally while you're reading this book. But it is just a wonderful novel. So I think people who hate it, I mean, there are probably people who hate it for all kinds of reasons, but a lot of people who hate it is because it may miss the mark on some of the racial injustice issues. But I think for a book written in 1960, yeah, it's really thought-provoking. And there is a side character named Boo Radley, who probably is an adult on the autism spectrum, and he has a really interesting role as well, and it fits into this whole, who is human, who do we treat as human, what assumptions do we make? Anyway, lots and lots to think about. I'm looking forward to reading this with my children and discussing it with them, especially because even since 2016, I'm sure there's a lot that I've forgotten. And the next one, again in no particular order, is my Antonia by Willa Cather. Actually, I am sure how you pronounce Antonia. It has the, well, you can see it has the accent on the first syllable, so it's not Antonia and it's not Antonia, it's Antonia, which is really hard to our American ears, but I actually don't know if it's Willa Cather or Willa Cather, so you guys tell me. This book has just a place in my heart forever and ever, because I picked it up totally unaware of what the plot would be about. It was just, you know, on my radar as a classic book to read, and the copy that I picked up was thinner than this one, and I wanted to read kind of a short classic. So I grabbed it, not knowing that it is about a family of Czech immigrants that came over in the late 1800s, along with a lot of other Czechs and other Central Europeans that came over during this particular time, the mid to late 1800s, and settled in the farmlands in Nebraska. My family came over at that same time, and it's based, the story is fiction, but it is based off of a real woman that the author knew, named Anna. And I have a first-generation Czech relative named Anna, and anyway, so in this book, Antonia, let's see, how would she say her last name? It says Shimirda, so I'm not quite sure how you would say it. I've been getting more interested in, like, how did my ancestors say their surnames, because it's not exactly how it looks. My grandmother's maiden name is Semrad. M-R-A-D, and it's Shimrad, and it would be probably S-H-E-M-I-R-A-D, Shimrad, but they dropped the I. So, and I have Milacek and a bunch of other really cool, some of them sound Slavic, some of them don't, Czech surnames, and so I want to reread this. I've read it twice. I want to reread it again now that I'm learning more about how to pronounce these people's names, so that I can geek out a little bit about it. But anyway, I'm digressing. This book follows this woman for her whole life. Her father came over. He had been a successful, what was it? I want to say an artist. He had been a successful something, tradesman, craftsman, something. But whatever his profession was, there, when he came to the United States, he did not speak English, nor did any of the Czech immigrants who came, and so he was left basically being limited to do whatever he could do with his hands with these communication barriers. And in his instance, that was really soul-destroying for him. He just was probably a brilliant man who found himself unable to share in the intellectual way that he had always been able to in a community with people who spoke the same language as him and had the same culture and values. And now he's living in a, you know, a mud and grass hole in the ground and scraping to get by. So his daughter is the main character. Okay, you guys. Life happened. I got interrupted and could not get back to it for hours and hours and hours here. I'm going to bring you closer. Oh, we've definitely exchanged water for scotch at this point. Oh, so I think there's not a great way to remember where I was and get back into what I was saying. So how about, I have an idea. How about I drink and tell you a little bit more about my ancestors and put some photos of them up on the screen. So this is a picture of my Nebraska family, taken maybe around 1902 or so, and the oldest male in the picture is my great, I think 3 greats, Grandpa Florian, and his wife Mary. And then the tallest boy in the back is my great Grandpa Joe. Yeah. So this would have been taken in probably Wacomas, Nebraska. And here's that same great-great-great-grandma Mary when she was a little older. A lot of my family still lives in Nebraska. If you're interested in the setting of my Antonia, it is in a fictional town modeled after Red Cloud, Nebraska. So again, maybe it would only interest you if you knew Nebraska, but my family was not from that part of the state necessarily. My family was from originally when they came to the United States and moved into Nebraska. It was what we now call the Bohemian Alps in Nebraska, and that includes places like Weston and Wahoo, and then later they moved to Wacomas and Enid. So that's where my Czech family is. And while I don't have any photos set exactly in the time when this book begins, because it begins with our main character as a young girl, by the time the author is writing, the book was about 1918 or so, and so the main character would have looked a little more like my elderly great-great-grandmother in that picture, which I think is just really fun. Here's a couple more fun ones. This is my great-great-grandma Anna. So is that right? Is that the right number of greats? Yeah, great-great-grandma Anna, and her husband Joe, who was the older one in that other picture. And I have this other great photo of her. Where is it? Here she is. She looks like maybe someone we wouldn't want to mess with. Oh, and I just realized I actually do have some portraits that were taken even earlier of my Czech ancestors. I had forgotten about these, but this is Mamie or Marie Brodek, and her husband, Venceslas, or actually he went by Václav Hromas. So these were actually done in about 1895. So I actually do have some older pictures. So things like that, knowing those little bits about my family endear me to this story. It's a story really full of loss and struggle and about assimilating, kind of, for lack of a better word, into an established culture, learning a new language, finding some way to fit in, and the prejudices that came her way. It is narrated by not one of the Czech characters. It's narrated by Jim Burden, who is a childhood friend of Antonia, and he goes back and visits her, and it's his recollections of her experience as told to him and as he saw it. So I think I would have loved it a little more even if her voice would have been the main narrative voice, but I think this, I'll always have this on the top of my list just because I feel like it opened my eyes to some of the struggles that my family could have gone through. And it is really beautifully written. It's also the third in the trilogy, what is it called? Well, I think it's just called the Great Plains Trilogy. There might be another name for the trilogy, and I'm not remembering it, but the others are O Pioneers, and I think it's The Song of the Lark. Yeah, and I haven't read either of those, but I do own them. I started reading O Pioneers and I got distracted, and I think that the draw for this one is my family history, but I know that I'll enjoy the others, so I'll get to them. But again, I'm not counting it as a series because I haven't read the other parts. Okay, next is this, my Jane Eyre. I read this for the first time in high school. I've read it maybe twice since then. And, angsty me loved Jane Eyre, but so did adult me for different reasons. Jane Eyre is a Gothic novel written in the mid-1800s about a plain Jane girl who has really kind of had a tough life. She's an orphan, and she gets sent to be kind of a caretaker for a girl in this big Gothic mansion, you know, dark and mysterious as they all are, called Thornfield, and falls in love with the master of the house, who's very different from her, and soon finds that there are secrets, as always in Gothic novels, which is why I love them so much. And it's beautiful, it's long, obviously, tons of backstory, tons of kind of inner turmoil and ruminating about things, beautiful contemplative prose, and I just love every single bit of Jane Eyre. I even love the ending, even though I hate it. It's just totally a love-hate. It's perfect for the book, and I hate parts of it, and I wouldn't change it. So if you haven't read Jane Eyre yet, do that, please, before you die. Read this book. And then Rebecca. So I did an entire video about Rebecca, and I will link that above and below. Rebecca is another Gothic novel, and it's funny that I didn't really tie together that quite a few of my favorite books and other books that are maybe not on my very top 7 that I have read are Gothic, and certainly have the same themes of just kind of like tragic, either misunderstood or flawed heroines. I do tend to have favorite books with main female characters, which just makes sense, and some mystery, some dark secrets, but not necessarily horror or even really thriller or suspense. So Rebecca is about another young, impressionable girl who falls in love with a man she hardly knows and gets whisked off to his manor where there are secrets. So the video that I went in depth with about Rebecca, I also compared the new movie version. So do go and check that out, even if you've read Rebecca. I'd love to know if you agree with my assessment of whether the book or the movie was better and what they changed for better or worse. And last but not least is another book I've talked about on this channel, and it's actually what got me thinking about making this video, because I was thinking about the family that recommended this book to me today. And I talked about this in my last 10 books tag under the prompt, a book you haven't finished. So it holds a distinction both as one of the only books that I have ever not forced myself to finish, and also one of my top 7. And that's because really, when it comes down to it, this is not one book. It is big. Look at the size of this type, and it's still that big. It's a lot of words. It's one of the longer books in the English language, and it's obvious. It's a classic for a reason, and beloved and translated into all kinds of languages for a reason. Les Mis by Victor Hugo was written originally in 1860 something, and the backdrop is kind of the pre and during the French Revolution, and it follows a man named Jean Valjean, who early in the book is sentenced to prison. My dog is barking at a bear, so I'm going to take a little break here. Okay, so Jean Valjean is sentenced to prison for stealing to feed his family. And it follows his life in prison and just the injustice of a punishment that does not fit the crime. And the other character, so he's the protagonist, the antagonist is named Javert, and he has a very different view of integrity, but his view of integrity is just as compelling as Jean Valjean's later becomes. So you have these two men both trying to do the right thing, who end up leading very different lives and are always at odds. And I just love the way their stories weave in together, and as Jean Valjean's life progresses, more characters come in, and there's lots of subplots that are also lovely. But Jean Valjean is really the reason that I love this book. And I love it and the musical so much that I actually had 2 songs from the musical in my wedding. My husband actually proposed to me at the musical. And the only reason I haven't finished this book is because it got close enough to the resolution that I knew what was going to happen, especially because I've seen the musical, I've read synopses, I've read lots of conversation around it, and I just kind of lost steam because it is really so dense. So I do want to finish it, and I want to go back probably just from the beginning because it's been so long at this point, but I feel like I got more than the essence of the novel, and I love the story so much that I'm still putting this on my top 7, even if that's cheating a little bit. All right, so these plus The Snow Child are my top 7 favorite novels of all time. I would love to know if you have any of these in common with me, or if you hated one or more of these. I'm sure I will discover new favorites as time goes on, so this is it for now, and we'll see what the future holds. Rebecca was I just read Rebecca this year, so I'm sure that the list will keep on growing. Leave me a comment and tell me which list of my favorites you'd be interested in me recording next. I've read lots and lots of genres. I was considering doing my favorite fantasy books, my favorite mystery books, my favorite romance books, or just more specifically my favorite children's and my favorite nonfiction. So let me know what you'd like to see for now. And if you have any other ideas for videos, please drop them in the comments. I'm so thankful that you guys just keep coming back and watching what I have to say. Tell me, as always, in your comment, along with everything else, what's in your cup. And I hope you have a wonderful night.